All right, let's talk about something really out there. What if I told you there's a theory of physics that doesn't just want to add a new chapter to the textbook, it wants to throw the whole book out and start over? We're diving into the Aether physics model, and folks, this thing is either a complete game changer for science, or it's one of the most fascinating pieces of fiction ever written. It aims to rebuild everything from a single, super radical idea.
And really, it all boils down to this one simple but massive question. You know those fundamental constants of nature? Things like the speed of light, the charge of an electron. We're always told they're just there. They're the rules of the game we have to play by. But what if they're not rules at all? What if they're just calculated results? What if they're just side effects of a much deeper, much more elegant blueprint for how the universe is put together? Yeah, that's the rabbit hole we're jumping into.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First up, we're going to look at why you'd even want to rethink physics from the ground up. Then, we'll get into the model's new language. It's called QMU. We'll meet the star of the show, the ether itself, and then see the wild claims about the universe it can supposedly build. And finally, and this is the best part, we'll look at the ultimate test, how we could actually prove if this is real or not. All right, Section 1, Rethinking Physics Foundations. So what is this Aether Physics Model, or APM? Well, it comes from a group called the Quantum Ether Dynamics Institute, and you gotta understand, this isn't just a tweak or a patch on our current understanding of physics. No. It's more like a complete factory reset for reality. It's about wiping the slate clean and rebuilding the entire universe from a totally different set of assumptions. And this is maybe the most important thing to get about it. The folks behind the APM say it is a complete, self-contained system. That means no weird magical numbers pulled out of thin air, no fudge factors. Everything has to come from inside the model. But here's the kicker. It's also experimentally falsifiable. It's designed to be tested. It makes very specific predictions and says, here's what you should see. If you don't see it, we're wrong. It's not just philosophy. It's a challenge thrown right at the feet of experimental physics.
Okay, next up. To even begin to wrap our heads around this, we have to learn its language. And I mean that literally. It's called Quantum Measurement Units, or QMU. Think of it this way. If physics is a book, the APM isn't just telling a new story, it's written in a completely different alphabet. So check this out. On the left, you see the stuff we're all used to. Meters, kilograms, seconds. They're based on, well, us, human scales. A meter is, about this big. A kilogram is the mass of a certain lump of metal. The APM says that's ridiculous. It's totally arbitrary, so it chucks them all out. And on the right, you see what it replaces them with. It uses the universe's own fundamental building blocks as the base units, the mass of an electron, the Compton wavelength. The whole idea is simple but profound. Stop measuring the universe with a human-made yardstick. Let the universe measure itself. And here's where it gets really cool. The APM calls its system a ledger. And that's a perfect word for it. Think of it like a cosmic bookkeeper. Every single transaction in the universe, every particle interaction, every force has to be entered into this ledger, and the books have to balance perfectly. There are these irreducible mathematical relationships, and you can't break them. It's not that the ledger describes the universe. In this model, the ledger is the universe. All right, so we've got our new language, these quantum measurement units. So what kind of universe can we actually build with it? Well, that brings us to the core idea, the namesake of the model, the Aether. Now, I know what you're thinking. Aether, isn't that old debunked idea of some kind of space jelly? Forget all of that. This is the Aether, completely reimagined. Get this. In the Aether physics model, the entire universe, everything you see, is made from just one thing, a single fundamental building block called the Aether unit. And it's not a point, it's not a little sphere, it's a complex geometric object. The technical name is a double-surface toroidal cardioid. Yeah, it's a mouthful. Just picture like a swirling donut-shaped thing. But the shape is the whole point. The theory claims that all the laws of physics, all the forces, all the constants, they're not separate rules. They are just consequences of the geometry of this one single shape. Okay, so imagine the universe is just packed with these geometric Aether units. They're not just floating around randomly. The entire substrate, the very fabric of reality they create, has a pulse. A universal heartbeat. The model calls it chronovibration. It's this incredibly fast, incredibly steady quantum tick, tick, tick that drives everything. It's the master metronome of the cosmos, and every single Aether unit is perfectly in sync with it. Whoa, okay, I know this looks like a bunch of crazy math. Don't sweat the details. This is just one of those ledger entries we were talking about, and what it's showing us is the absolute heart of the entire model.
It's a mathematical lock. On one side of the equation, you have stuff related to the shape, the geometry of that Aether unit. On the other side, you have the tick, that universal chronovibration. And what this equation says is that these two things are fundamentally linked. They're like two sides of the same coin. The shape determines the rate of the tick, and the tick determines the properties of the shape. They are locked together permanently.
Okay, let's recap. We've got new units, a ledger system that has to balance, a single geometric building block, and a universal heartbeat. So, what do you get when you put it all together? What can you actually build? Well, according to the Aether physics model, the answer is, well, the entire universe.
And this right here is one of its biggest, most mind-blowing claims. That number, 1836.118, that's the ratio of a proton's mass to an electron's mass. In standard physics, we just measure it and say, well, that's the number. It's a brute fact of the universe. The APM says, no, it's not. It claims that this number can be calculated from pure geometry, specifically from the constant 6 times pi to the 5th power, which comes directly from the geometry of the Aether unit. Just let that sink in. One of the most fundamental numbers in all of science might just be a property of a shape. And believe me, it doesn't stop there. That mass ratio is just the tip of the iceberg. The APM claims its ledger can derive, well, the whole shebang. We're talking about passing all the classic tests of general relativity, explaining how neutrinos work. It even claims to calculate the value of the cosmological constant, dark energy, by treating it as a literal stress in the ether. It goes on to propose how matter could be created from the vacuum, and even principles for new kinds of energy and propulsion. It's not just a theory of something, it claims to be a theory of everything.
So, I know what you're thinking. That is a huge list of extraordinary claims. And you know what they say about extraordinary claims, right? They require extraordinary evidence. So how on earth could we ever know if any of this is actually true? And that brings us to the final and most important part, the ultimate test.
This is what makes this model so different from a lot of other fringe theories. The authors are obsessed with this idea. They say, the study reports all quantities strictly in QMU and specifies pass-fail criteria for replication. In plain English, they're laying all their cards on the table. For every single prediction, they've designed an experiment and they've said, here's the number you should get. If you get it, we're onto something. If you don't, our theory is wrong. They are practically begging for people to try and prove them wrong.
And we're not talking about vague thought experiments here. These are detailed, buildable proposals. You've got things like the trumpet resonator, which is a device meant to test some of the model's core electrical predictions. Then there's the rotating flux tubes, which sounds like science fiction. It's literally an apparatus designed to see if it can generate a propulsive force by interacting with the ether. They even have proposals for using giant radio telescopes to look for tiny, predicted deviations from general relativity near neutron stars. These are real, concrete experiments just waiting for someone to build them and run the numbers. So, where does that leave us? Is the Aether physics model a unified theory of everything? A peek behind the curtain at the universe's source code? Or is it just an incredibly clever, fascinating bit of mathematical fiction? A system that's beautiful and consistent on paper, but has nothing to do with the world we live in? Well, the beauty of it is, we don't have to just wonder. The theory makes predictions. The experiments can be built. In the end, the only thing that matters is what the data says. The experiments will decide.